that blessing is all about saying, may God reveal himself to you. May he make himself known to you so that you can know him. May he love you so that you can love him. And may he give you everything you need to live life the way he intended for you to live it. Because that's what gives him glory, is when we live fully alive. And
Welcome. Thank you for checking out this new series of videos we put together. Over the course of these 6 videos, Pastor Joshua and RJ will be discussing the nuances of our congregational worship. To get the most out of this series, follow the links in the description to access the study guide we put together. Also, it really helps us out if you could complete a feedback survey to let us know what your thoughts. Finally, if you enjoy these videos, please share them with your friends and family, either on social media or through email. Now, in the 6th video, Pastor Joshua and RJ wrap up our series by talking about the purpose of our gatherings and how our liturgy is designed accordingly. Enjoy the conversation.
So what's our next step? How do we instill that transition that this is natural and what should occur? You've
Right.
heard the word, now something's supposed to happen with it. What is that?
So this last section we refer to as a time of response.
Okay.
And for that reason, because the idea is that the people will respond. And so we begin that with what we call a hymn of sending. And basically the idea is, we call it a hymn of sending or a hymn of response because you're responding. And the way you should respond is by getting up and moving your feet out that door and living what it is that we've discussed. One of the reasons why we did that, rather than doing like an altar call after the sermon, is predominantly because my concern is not whether or not you feel an emotional response following the sermon. My primary concern is whether or not you act in obedience and live out that response throughout the rest of your week. And so the hymn of sending is about solidifying what it is that you heard and your willingness to act in obedience to it. So the hymn that we use, or song, whatever we may use in that place, is always one that is chosen where the lyrics are such that they form that kind of I've heard and I believe and I will do based on what I've heard.
So once again, heavy intention behind even,
very much so,
even just a song.
Absolutely, yes. So that's directly after the preaching. And then we follow that up with the Lord's Prayer.
Yeah, I wanted to take a couple minutes with the Lord's Prayer.
Sure.
Because I think the Lord's Prayer really is one of those things that anybody that's spent any time inside of a church is going to feel at least a little familiar with.
Right.
Even though they may be a complete stranger of what it
Sure.
actually is. So
Sure.
can you just take us a couple minutes? Why is that there? Why does it have value? And why do you want your congregation to know it?
Right. So, very good. So the thing about the Lord's Prayer is, one, it's something, again, we can do it all together, but like sometimes you'll do a song Not everybody knows the words. Not everybody's familiar with the words. Maybe not everybody's ready to say the words together.
Maybe not everybody feels
Whatever.
comfortable singing.
Maybe not everybody likes the way their voice sounds.
Yeah.
Right. So, but the Lord's Prayer is another one of those declarations that we do together, like the Apostles' Creed, like the Shema. And so everybody knows it, they're familiar with it, and they can speak it together. So we get the voice of the congregation speaking this confession together of what we all believe. It is a prayer, but it's also a pattern for prayer. And so much like the invocational prayer that we do, which is kind of preset out, the Lord's Prayer is such that once you've memorized it, you can spend a lot of time just kind of reflecting on it and dwelling on it, and it can take you a lot of great places. And then part of that kind of interwoven with that is that the different aspects of the Lord's Prayer, the different parts that are hit on, they're all kind of, they highlight the values of the Christian community. So like our Father, He's our Father, ours together. It's a community of faith. We are one family. He is our Father. So we're seeking Him not as our King, not as our judge. He is those things. But primarily, we seek Him as our Father.
But the relational status.
That relational thing. Yes, exactly. This is huge for the Apostle Paul in Romans. It's the Spirit of God within us that cries out, Abba, Father. And if you don't have that desire in you to call out to Him as Father, then something has gone wrong with your faith. Like, so that's a big deal. And that's embedded into the Lord's Prayer. Our Father who's in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Your name is holy. And we recognize that it's holy, and we acknowledge that it's holy, and so that thing of holiness, back to consecration, back to sanctification. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done.
So once again, doing the King James.
The King James,
There it
right?
is.
That's what we
Couple videos
because
ago.
everybody has memorized
Yep.
it, so that's what we use, right? It's familiar. But thy kingdom come, thy will be done. That idea that we are focused on His will, His mission, His work. It's not about what we want. It's about what He wants. It's not about our vision of what would make Pine Run EMC a great church. It's about what His vision for this place is. It's not about our desire for what would make the Kiski Valley area, the Alikiski area, a great community. It's His vision, His will for what we can do in this area. So we're aligning ourselves with His purposes. On earth as it is in heaven. What's the next part? Give us this day our daily bread. A commitment to simplicity. Give us what we need. Not necessarily what we want,
Give us what we need
but
today.
what we need today.
Not tomorrow,
Right.
Not next week.
And that's so powerful. I mean, so much of the economy of grace, of living a life of generosity is built on this understanding that we seek God daily for what we need, and He takes care of us that way. Matthew 6 talks about how if we seek the kingdom first, He'll give us everything we need. And a lot of times we get upset because we don't have what we think we need, but it's not because we don't have what we need, it's because we don't have what we think we need.
Big difference between want and need.
Right.
Especially scripturally
Right.
speaking.
And so every Sunday we say this prayer, give us our daily bread and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. That commitment to humility, to always remembering that we need grace as much as everyone else around us needs grace. And the reason why it's juxtaposed that way is because not because God's forgiveness of us depends on us forgiving others, except in the sense that if you can't forgive someone else, it's because you don't understand grace. If you don't understand grace, you'll not seek grace. If you're not going to seek grace, you're not going to ask for forgiveness. God can't forgive you because you're living in sin.
It's been about 6 years or so, but I taught, I think it was 7 weeks, 7 Sundays, just breaking down portions of the Lord's Prayer. And when we got to this part, my conclusion along the lines was, and again, my exegesis has gotten better since then, so forgive me. but when I got to the end, I just asked how many of us would be willing to pray and mean it that way. Like, God, I understand your forgiveness is based on Christ, but what if it was based on you? Would you
Right.
pray that God forgive you the way you forgive that person you're holding a grudge against today?
Oh, man.
Like, if that is the limit, like, if God can only forgive
Right.
you to the level you forgive,
Right.
are you willing to accept those terms?
How many people are scared of praying this prayer because they think that?
Right?
Oh my gosh, that'd be horrible.
Yeah.
So give us this day our daily bread. Lead us not into temptation, which I talk about that a lot.
You actually just touched on that this past Sunday.
Yeah. It's a issue. A lot of times you read it and you go, so God leads us into temptation? That's not what it means. In the Greek, the idea is God leads us to the edge of temptation. God leads us to the edge of the abyss where we make a choice. We can either hold on to him or we can allow ourselves to fall into self-destruction. And what the prayer is actually praying is, Lord, don't abandon us when we find ourselves in temptation.
Well, I have to imagine that, because Jesus is teaching this to his disciples as a response to a question on how to pray properly. So that's the context.
Right.
And so within that, we talk about assumed knowledge all the time, right?
Right.
We talk about the idea that sometimes you have to communicate in a way, understanding what the people already know, and then therefore not revisiting what they already know.
Right.
Jesus talking to his disciples in this way, he doesn't need to explain these small tenets of it, because he's talking to young Jewish men who have grown up with these tenets in their entire life. They've grown up singing the Shema in the morning and the evening.
Right.
They know these things.
They know the shepherd psalm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, the Lord takes you in
kingships,
places you don't always want to be. It's called the shadow of the valley, the valley of the shadow of death. Right.
So when we see this distilled prayer for the people to keep it at arm's length because, well, that sounds this way, or to create entire philosophies, because I won't call them theologies, but entire philosophies because that sounds this way, that can show us that it's disingenuous. So how do we, as the congregation, reciting this week after week, avoid that trap?
Yeah, ask questions.
Okay.
Study the
So
scripture.
back to that theme?
I think,
It seems like every video.
Seems like every single one goes back to the same thing. Right. We're all in it. Right. Yeah.
So we're at the Lord's Prayer. We're going through it. We're asking for an understanding of it. We're calling to, this is our community. This is our values. This is how we live our life together.
Right.
And then the next step, the Aaronic blessing.
Yes.
Now, I think this is something that people completely miss. Like, just because,
Perhaps.
again, it's in the Old Testament. Like,
well, that's fair.
it's in
That's fair.
Numbers.
It is. It's in Numbers.
Yeah.
Numbers 6, God tells Moses to tell Aaron, this is how you'll bless my people. Okay. And so when you come together, you're going to give them this blessing. And so it's known as the Aaronic blessing, or the priestly blessing, high priestly blessing. And it's the one I do every week. And there are other blessings. There are many other benedictions or blessings throughout the New Testament and they're all equally valid. So it's not that this one's better than others, but I like the fact that this one is grounded in that Hebraic culture and the Hebraic mind. Yeah. And so again, it comes back to that thing of trying to make sure that everything about our faith is anchored in its roots, is anchored in its legacy and its heritage. And so I come back to the Aaronic blessing every week for that main reason. And the idea is, may the Lord bless you and keep you and make his face shine upon you, be gracious to you, lift up his countenance upon you and give you his peace. Really, all of that is about taking those three elements that I talked about previously, that God wants us to know him and to love him and to live fully alive in him. Yeah. That blessing is all about saying, may God reveal himself to you. May he make himself known to you so that you can know him. May he love you so that you can love him. And may he give you everything you need to live life the way he intended for you to live it. Because that's what gives him glory, is when we live fully alive. And so it ties back to the beginning of the service. It ties the liturgy all together. And it also comes back to those main key components of what we as the Community Church of Pine Run really focus in on.
So we have this nice little bow of a service, and it's tied up really nicely in the Aaronic blessing. And then we have the thing that I probably get a lot of questions on. And so I'm gonna ask, and on behalf of the congregation, I'm gonna demand that at the end you shout out Maranatha, and then they respond back to you.
Yeah.
Why? Where does it come
It's-
from? What is
all right,
it? What's
so-
it mean? And what do you want them to do with
Right.
it?
So, Maranatha is an Aramaic word that then gets transliterated into Koine Greek in one passage. I think one passage in the whole Bible. It's
Oh, I'm
1
aware of it,
Corinthians
yeah.
16:22, and the Apostle Paul. It's just one word,
Yep.
and it just means Lord come, unless you interpret it in a slight variance, which means the Lord has come, right? And so it's a really small thing. But when I first came to the faith, first was called to ministry, and I was sitting under my pastor, he used to say it all the time. And so it just kind of always stuck in my head. I used to say it all the time. Literally, the idea is both. The Lord has come, and the Lord is coming. And so while it's not the same word, I don't believe it's the same word used in Revelation. It very much is the same idea that John is getting to in Revelation, where at the very end, after everything is done, and he says, the Lord is coming. Even so, Lord, come quickly. Quickly come. And so I end every service, every gathering that we have together, I try and end with this same confession, this same declaration. The Lord has come, and he is coming again. Even so, quickly come. Because that is why we're here.
Yeah, that's right.
It's all about him. And so this last section of our liturgy, it's all designed around this idea that he's called us to himself, that the purpose of our life together is not just to come together on Sunday morning and worship, as good as this is, but to live out this life every day. And we're going out and we're reminded of the shared values. We're reminded of all the things he wants to do for us. And we're going to go out and we're going to live that out, which is very much the fulfillment of one of the last things that Jesus tells his disciples before he ascends back to heaven, where in Matthew 28 we're told, he says, go into all the world and teach what I've taught you. Make disciples and teach them everything I've taught you, and
like
baptize them in the name of the Father and the
there.
Son and the Holy
Teach
Spirit.
everyone what I've taught you.
Teach everybody what I've taught you.
So many people want to skip the being discipled part.
Right.
Christian, I confessed, I'm ready to make disciples.
Right.
And they've missed that. I like the way you worded that you're taking that ambiguity out of. There's no grayness there.
No, there's no grayness there. And there wasn't when he said it.
No, absolutely not.
But unfortunately, some studies show that like upwards of 50% of people who claim to be Christians don't even know that text.
Yeah.
So, like, leadership in the Christian church in America has failed pretty dramatically, if that's true. So, I mean, it's something that should be before people all the time. And if nothing else, the idea should be before people all the time, that we are called out of darkness and into God's light so that we can become like the Son.
Yeah.
We are being restored. The Imago Dei, the image of God, is restored in us, which is what's really neat about Matthew 28. And I'll geek out on this for just a second before we go. But if you look at Matthew 28 and what we call the Great Commission, all it really is a reiteration of Genesis 1, 26 through 31, where God gives us the divine mandate. He's created Adam and Eve, and he says, I want you to be fruitful. I want you to multiply, fill the earth, and subdue it, right? Take my character, take who I am, and reproduce that in a society. Make a community that reflects my values.
And fill this gift of creation that I give to you.
Right.
With that.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what discipleship is. That's what the Great Commission is. That's what we're called to do and be. And that, when it's all done, when you've finished out a service, when you finished out a gathering here on Sunday morning, hopefully what you leave with is an excitement about the fact that he has come to make that possible and that he will return, and that in the in-between we have the opportunity to share that with as many people as we can.
And maybe a nice little way to cap this all off. You mentioned something, and I'm going to call you to a recall of it, because I want to point out to them. It ties together the idea that you're a disciple maker. That's kind of what your job is, right?
Right.
But
Yeah.
But you were once a disciple.
Right.
Why do we do Maranatha again? Who taught it to you?
Oh, my pastor.
So we have a legacy of
Right.
pastors passing down traditional things that people in these seats just do. That
Right.
has such a depth of meaning, not only
Right.
scripturally, but for you personally, which by extension means them
Right.
personally.
Right.
So they have picked up
That's nice.
a
Yes.
discipleship from your disciple maker, not
Right.
from you as the disciple maker.
Right.
There's a lineage and a heritage and a tradition
Yes.
that's worth valuing
Right.
within the confines of worship to God.
Right.
And so again, tease that out for a second. What does it mean? How much do you carry of your pastor with you?
Oh my gosh. Probably far more than I realize.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, you know what? That's just huge.
Mm-hmm.
We are so blessed to be a part of something bigger than ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
It is a community of faith, and we are so blessed to be able to pass that on. And our pastors that pour into us, and then we pour into others,
Mm-hmm.
pastors, fathers, husbands, heads of household, the way, and God's just doing this phenomenal work here in this place through all of this, and I hope that's what people see.
Yeah.
Thank you again for checking the video out today. We hope you found it informative and inspiring, and we hope you will check out the other videos in the series. Remember to complete a survey, and again, if you found the video helpful, share it.